What's up, everybody? Knuckleball here. Today we're going to talk about José Berrios since there's been a lot of rumors that the Blue Jays might consider trading him. I'm going to go over 3 potential teams that I think he might be traded to, along with one oddball team that I don't think you're going to hear from anyone else. To start off with, I don't think the Blue Jays should be trading José Berrios. He's just too valuable of a pitcher, number one, just for them as an organization. But secondly, his value isn't that high perceived to everybody else. And I'm basing that off of some baseball trade values crap that I don't believe in too much. But I do think there's a sense that with other teams that since he has this weird contract where it's 2026 is at like 19 million, but the 2 years after that is a player option, that there's a lot of money. I believe for $24 million a year, each of those 2 years, that other teams are going to sit here and say, that's a lot of money and we don't want to invest that in a guy that maybe we think is declining. Again, I don't believe that, but I'm kind of just gauging off of what others are saying. So I believe that the Blue Jays should just hang on to him. The Dodgers proved last year that you can never have too many pitchers. But we're going to do this video as if they are going to trade him, who they can trade them to, some fits, and of course, like I said, that one crazy team that I don't think anyone else is going to mention. And I'll explain why I think that that team is actually a fit. I'm not just saying shit and throwing it against a wall. I do think it's a possibility, and it will work out for a reason that I'll get to. So to start off, let's look at the Blue Jays minor league system, because again, I don't think they're going to want MLB ready players. As it is, I just have that feeling that they're going to re-sign Bichette. I don't think they're going to. I don't think they're going to sign Tucker, but they could. And even if they get one of those, much less 2 of those, they're already kind of at the max of where you're going to put everybody. Like if they sign both of them, someone has to be the odd man out, as it is. So I don't really think that they're looking for major league ready players. I think they're more looking for minor leaguers and maybe even people that would be farther away. And I don't think they would go after pitching. I'm not going to count Trey because he's already up there. I'm not even going to count him as a prospect. But, Tiedemann, I know he's coming off of the injury, I think, if I got my things right. But they have some pitching already. So balance-wise, they have a couple infielders up here. They have a couple outfielders, in that mid-range, 9 to 11. So I think they'd kind of take anything, to be honest, as far as position goes. But I don't really think they're looking for pitching. So most of the stuff that I come up with is just going to be a couple position players from other teams, and we'll get into that. So I think the first team that fits them or fits this trade perfectly would be the Padres. The reason why I say that is they're looking for, let me backtrack. With this trade, since what I mentioned earlier about that valuation from other teams kind of being not so great, and baseball trade values being in something like the negative 25 million range, which again, I don't believe, that's why I don't have this up. I don't believe in baseball trade values all that much, but it's there. It's a tool, it's a resource. But with that thought process, the Blue Jays are going to have to put some money into this deal. It's going to be Berrios plus something, 10 million, 15 million, somewhere in that range. So I think that's going to be exactly what the Padres are looking for. They're looking for a pitcher that they get cheap, at least cheap this year. So if this is a deal where it's Berrios plus, I'll go on the high end, $15 million, they're only paying $4 million for Berrios this year. And then he has that player option where he might opt out if he has a good year. And more than likely he would opt out. So the Padres could be sitting here I might not have to give up a lot of prospect capital and I can get this guy for fairly cheap. Which again is at the end, what I'm going to say is that's why I think there's that oddball team that might really work for this, but I'll get to that. But anyway, it works for the Padres in that sense. This is a team that's looking for 2 starting pitchers at honestly somewhere in $10 million or less a piece. That's about what their budget is. It's all they have because they have some of those crazy contracts. And as you guys know, they're going through a potential ownership change as it is because that they want to sell because financially they're not doing well or they say they're not doing well. So it fit. And then as far as like what I think would take to get the deal done, I honestly think it would just take a couple players in the 10 to 20 range of these teams that I'm saying. So prospects that are ranked 10 to 20th. Now it's a little bit different on the Padres. This is my personal thought process, so you guys can comment if you disagree with anything. That's the point of this. I want to hear from you guys. But a 10 through 20 prospect in the Padres is probably a little bit weaker, I think, than the normal team. But I still think it would get the job done. So if they put in there like, he's kind of major league ready. I just noticed that. But if the Blue Jays wanted more of a long-term project, maybe they would even go after a catcher. You could put in like a Ty Harvey, and you could put in someone who's even farther down, maybe like Tiers as an outfielder. Two guys that are far away. I get it. They're both an A-ball, but you probably put that package together. I think the Blue Jays, if they're doing this, because again, I don't think they should be doing this, but if they're doing this, you have to remember it's a salary dump, which again, I think when you think about this doesn't make any sense because you don't even know that he's going to take the player option as it is, so he might only have 1 year. But if the Blue Jays even think about doing this because of signing Dylan Cease and they don't think they have room for Berrios or somebody can do it for cheaper, it would kind of just be a salary dump move. So they wouldn't be looking for a ton back. I think they'd be very happy to get two players like this, just roll with it and go with it and kind of be like, he's gone. I think Berrios is again, I've said this a million times. I will continue to say this during this video. I think Berrios is way too good to do that to just let him go and just have a salary dump. But if it happens, that would be the reason why it happens. So I think San Diego is a fit in the sense that they're looking for somebody cheap. They obviously need starting pitching. And I'm sure San Diego would actually give two better guys than I labeled out. I mean, San Diego is probably willing to give up a top 10 or two to get somebody as good as he is for as cheap as he potentially could be, depending on the money that Toronto puts in. So I think they would be the most perfect fit of any team. But a secondary team, and it's just a team that's just looking for pitching in general, would be the Giants. And it's the same type of thing. I mean, it could be, obviously, we're not going top 5, 6, 7, 8 prospects here. But anybody in this range, I think the Giants would be willing to do it, especially, again, if we're sitting here and it's like, it's going to cost me a max of $10 million. Like, let's say they only get $10 million from Toronto or even $8 million or something like that. Fine, it's $11 million for this year. For Berrios, who, in my opinion, on a normal rotation, is a 3. You can leave your comments on that, too, if you think I'm crazy. But for Toronto, with the way that rotation's set up right now, he's number 5. And he probably has to compete for the spot, which is the whole reason why these rumors are coming up in the first place. But I think, from all the buying team's perspective, you have this possibility of getting a number 3, not giving up that much as far as prospect capital, and getting a guy, at least in today's market, fairly cheap. So I'm just highlighting 3 teams. I mean, this might literally be like 29 teams that might be willing to do this. I mean, anybody might be willing to do this. So maybe it does become a little bit of a bidding war if it winds up happening and they actually get some pretty good prospects out of it, or don't have to pay the money down as much. We'll see. But I think any of these guys fit. I mean, again, I don't know if the Blue Jays want an infielder, but they could. I mean, they have a little bit of everything. So you could take a guy like Ahuna, and you could take Gutierrez, you could take Cohen, you could take any of these guys. And I think from a value perspective, if GMs around the league think as lowly as baseball trade values do, this will get it done. And then third team I want to point out, and maybe this should be like a number 1 team because they really fit it, is the Athletics. This is a team that's dying for pitching. They're probably willing to actually give up something pretty decent if there's a pitcher out there who in their rotation would fit in as it could be the number 1, to be honest with you. He might be their number 1, and they wouldn't have to pay that much for him. And then there's a team that would be very confident that if they if they traded for him, unless he had this crazy bad year, he's opting out of that player deal every time because he's not going to want to play in that stadium. We already know the Severino type stuff with how bad it is to play in Sacramento. He's opting out. So again, if you're the A's, and you're going to see this with the next team that I talk about too, if you're one of these teams that you're pretty confident he's going to opt out no matter what, and you're going to get some money from the Blue Jays to pay down the salary, it becomes a really, really cheap one-year contract that for the A's, they can get him, and let's just say it doesn't work out for the A's the way they want it to work out this year, and they find themselves at the All-Star break and they're 6-7 games out of the wild card or more, well, then you just trade him. There's always going to be a team that would take that caliber of pitcher, especially with the injuries that come up to other teams and so forth, and you're going to get back about what you gave up in prospect capital. And since you got money from the Blue Jays, you haven't even eaten into the part that you'd have to pay. Like, you actually might net money out of it. So that's why I'm basing all of these trade things off of what I think other people think, which I know kind of sounds dumb to say. If I was basing it off of what I think, there's no way in hell I would be the Blue Jays and do this. Like, one of the things isn't happening. I'm not paying it down, or I'm getting higher or better prospects, one of the two. But I'm just saying, like, the things that I've heard and what I think other people think, the Blue Jays would be adding in like the $10 million, and it would just take these mid-level prospects. So again, I don't even know if I mentioned it. Like, from the A's, again, it could be any of these guys. It could just be Turley and Lasco, just a couple outfielders that would probably make the Blue Jays think about it, especially if it's just a salary dump and the Blue Jays are putting in that little bit of money. So we'll see. Last team, which is, again, no one's going to think about this. And again, we don't know. This is just the early stages of the Berrios rumors. No one knows like how far this is going to go. This could be a week from now, like no one talks about this. Or it could just grow and grow and grow and grow. That will just have to just play out as to what happens. But if it continues to grow and grow and grow, I think more and more teams are going to be interested in this potential really good deal. And my crazy team is the White Sox. And again, I think a lot of teams that because the A's and the White Sox are I'm going to put them in the same group. Obviously, the A's are way ahead of like where they are in the rebuild, so to speak, and all that stuff than the White Sox are. But all these like cheap teams, all these teams that are looking for a player and not have to pay that much, like this might be like a gold mine for them. Because the Blue Jays are going to say, well, he's our 5. Yeah, but he's not really a 5. He's a 3. And on the White Sox, he's probably a 1. And on the A's, we just talked about he's a 1. So these teams might like get on this in the sense where it's like, look, I know if I'm the A's, I'm the White Sox here. I know he's going to opt out of his player deal. He does not want to play here. So I know I'm trading him for 1 year, $19 million. And if I get money from the Blue Jays on top of that, it's like I'm getting a potential ace for, even if I got $5 million from the Blue Jays, I'm getting a potential ace for $14 million. For the White Sox, that's a lot of money, but for most teams, it's nothing. So I think a lot of teams are going to be on this. That's why I include a team like the White Sox. They get a potential cheap idea or a cheap shot at an ace for them. And if things go bad, just like the A's, or not even bad, for the White Sox, they just kind of are where we think they're going to be. They were a 60-win team last year. I think they're going to continue to improve. Let's say they're a 67, 68-win team in 2026, which I think is probably about where they'll be. Well, that means by the time the trade deadline comes around, they're going to be still well out of it. They're not going to be anywhere near it. They can just trade Berrios, get probably at least, depending on the type of season he's having, at least get back what they traded to Toronto, and they wouldn't have paid that much because they would have at least got some money from Toronto, and that's they only have to pay half the season's contract if they're trading him. So I think for these cheap teams, it works out quite well. And then again, Toronto could pick any of these guys. I think they would probably like Woolco jumps out at me. I don't know why. I just think the Blue Jays would actually kind of prefer an outfielder. I could be totally wrong on that, but guy like Woolco and Sox really don't have a lot of outfielders. And that, yeah, Montgomery's not being touched. That's the guy they got from, one of the guys they got in the Crochet trade, and he's panned out quite well so far in the minors. So that's not happening. But again, you get my drift. They could get a couple mid-level prospects, not have to pay that much. You know, the A's and the White Sox type teams, he's not taking his player deal. It's a one-year thing. If things go bad or I'm not in the hunt, I just trade him. And it's kind of even, and the money might even be even too. So again, I mean, this video is just full of hypotheticals because I just don't think this is going to happen. I don't see the Blue Jays trading him. But if they did, these are the teams that I see going after him, and this is the type of deal that I see. Like that, Toronto adds in some money, and it's a couple mid-level prospects in return. It's going to do it for this video. Try to add something that I'm sure you haven't heard before, and that's like the White Sox actually maybe making a splash. I'll continue to do some trade targets and some free agency kind of stuff, and I'll try to continue to have that team where, again, I'm not just making this up. Like, I think it makes sense for the White Sox. It just depends on what the Blue Jays, how much they want to give money-wise and everything. But I'll continue to try to have that weird oddball thing that winds up happening. So, till next time, have a good one.